quorum. But then the next section says at least 50% of the members must be physically present at a meeting at which a member will participate. So that means you have to have 3. Then the next sentence says, which is not part of the statute, but it says not more than 50% of the members may participate by an electronic means of communication. So I don't think you're going to have that situation ever unless you had a board with an even number of people, and few boards have an even number of people. So I would say let's redact the last sentence of section D. I had suggested to council in an email that we get rid of paragraph C, but after thinking about that, I think we should leave that in just because that's exactly what the statute says. So obviously we'll have to make sure that we have 50% of the members here for meetings, but that's the long and the short of it. Otherwise, it follows the statute. A member can't attend more than 50% of the meetings by electronically unless you've got military service, an illness, death of a relative, or an emergency. There are certain meetings that the town council members cannot participate in by electronic communication. Those are meetings at which you're adopting a budget, making a reduction in personnel, initiating a referendum, establishing or increasing a fee or penalty, or using the government's eminent domain authority, or establishing, raising, or renewing tax. You can attend 2 meetings by electronic communication. The memoranda has to look a little different, but Sandy's already doing all of these things. And then I also included language from Indiana Code 5-14-1.5-3.7, which discusses when the governor, if the governor declares a disaster emergency again in the future, here's what the town council needs to do. So I'm happy to revise it as the council sees fit.
Questions, Ms. Brown? From the council. As town manager, do you see issues with any of this?
Sorry,
Do you see any issues with any of this?
no, none at all.
Okay. Well, council will give this, since it is a council policy, if you all give this a careful look over the week and get with Ms. Brown with any changes in it before it comes up to ordinance on second reading, which should be the next meeting, which is
July 26th.
26th. Okay, so if we can do that, please. We'll move on now to ordinance on second reading. This is ordinance 2119, pilot agreement with Ellettsville Senior Citizens Housing, LLC, Richlands Citizens Housing, and Maple Shades.
Come back to that. Yvonne and Carson, I think we're trying to log in through Zoom and they have the wrong information. I'm trying to get that to them now.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Can we wait for a couple minutes, Dennis? Is that all right? Do you need to be gone, or can you wait for a couple minutes?
Yeah, I can wait.
Okay, we'll come back to this. We'll move now to, old business, which there is none, under flood report. Patrick Jacobs with flooding issues. Step up, please.
I appreciate you guys' time. I just had a few concerns and questions about my home. I'm at the corner of Daisy Drive is where I'm at, 785 Daisy Drive, and I'm the last house right next to the creek. And I've noticed since Ruby Creek's been built, I'm getting a lot of flash and a lot of water into my backyard, so much that it's like literally a retention pond in itself that's flooding into my crawl space. I pumped for several hours, so my concerns is that I'm going to have I'm going to end up down the road getting a busted foundation or home repair problems due to all the water I'm receiving. I noticed since that even the retention pond that's been built across strictly behind me, water was, and I took some videos of it while it was happening. It just rushes right over it, and the culvert that's coming in after they put the collection receiver and things in, it's just blowing through my backyard into my crawl space in my home. So I'm concerned. I get about 18 to 20 inches of water that goes all the way up. Probably within an hour's time, I can go from just inside the gate about 40 feet to the back of my house into my crawl space. So it just seems like since Ruby Creek's been developed and the storm locations and everything comes right back into my backyard and collects right there at my home. And I've kind of took some pictures there at the culverts. It seems like they're starving to get the water out like a bottleneck under the street. I walked up and kind of looked and took a few pictures of the nice culvert that was put in a couple thousand feet north there for the second edition of Ruby Creek, and seeing that it's a nice like 10 foot wide by maybe 5 foot tall. My assumption is just an assumption that if that was the case, maybe in front of my house at the road right there at Meadowlands and Daisy, that it'd be enough to be able to take that water. Because I've noticed with the retention pond in itself, it just overtakes it. With the new houses in the streets up there, I'm concerned with my home that it's going to be flooded out. So I just want to bring it. I sent some picture. Excuse me. I sent some pictures of Mr.
3 hours from the beach,
It was
from
a
the
little
coast.
humid. I don't know if you remember that day we were having lemonade.
Oh.
It was a little rough outside.
It was not just a little humid. It was hot as all get out. Yeah.
I mean, not tonight, but you have possession.
Oh, I have, yeah. I have pictures.
Okay.
I viewed his pictures, which is exactly what I see when I go up there every time it storms. I've been over there at night. We've had 3 or 4 storms probably since I talked to you. And it does flash flood there. I think one of the problems is it's raining too hard, not to be light about it, that every storm it rains too hard, and Patrick said even when we have a semi-hard rain, he still has the problems. There's a retention pond that is supposed to be directly behind his house, and you can argue whether it will help under the circumstances. I think Patrick would say probably not, but it's not in place. And so we talked to the developer. They moved in the day after I talked to him. They moved in, started working on it, and it's rained ever since. So they can't. It's in the bottom. It's too wet. They can't get in to put that into place. He has 2, 24-inch poplar that has fell crossways in the creek downstream from his backyard, and so it's created a dam. So that inhibits the water to get away even more. And we've talked about doing a project where we open up at Meadowland Drive and Daisy. There's a box storm sewer that goes across there that's too small for some of the rains that we've had, and we've talked about replacing it, and it takes quite a bit of money. I think what we decided to take, just materials, was $60,000 at least, maybe even more, and we talked about doing the work ourselves, and we can talk about that at a different date. But he has problems. I mean, he has a trampoline in his backyard, and maybe the last 3 rains, it's got within less than a foot to the bottom of his trampoline, which they all set 30, 40 inches high. Yeah. And so it's when you see the pictures, it's pretty shocking. Mm-hmm. So I mean, as a homeowner, I'm sure he has nowhere else to turn to us. So we've started the process of getting the retention pond in place. I'm not sure why it isn't in place already, and we're considering, with the board's approval, of going in and trying to remove the trees from the creek, maybe even get the developer. They have equipment on site. Maybe they could help us with that. And besides that, I mean, really, I think Patrick thinks that putting a new box culvert across that intersection is maybe some of the answer, because it really does choke right there when it goes into the box culvert. And once it starts choking there, it just backs up immediately. But I'm not an engineer, and that is that area is challenged anyway. I mean, you know, it's the bottom. And I think we may need to get some engineering done before we do any work. I would hate to go in there and spend a bunch of money and find out we should have talked to an engineer first. So, I mean, that's about all I know about it. I mean, Meadowlands has some areas that always flood. Sometimes even downstream from the box culvert, the creek gets so high that it backs up into those people along Meadowlands on the, I guess you'd call it the south side. You know, it threatens their homes. I don't think it's ever flooded anybody from the rear, but Meadowlands Drive becomes a river sometimes. And so there's, you know, Kip and I talked today about new pipe inlets and perhaps some new pipe to the creek. The problem is, if you put the water down there and then it backs up far, you know, harder on Patrick, and so it's challenged for sure. Plus, and I hate to bring it up because nobody wants to hear it when they have a problem like Patrick does, but we have had some hard rains in short periods of time. Maybe not since 2018 had we had those. I mean, we've had 3 storms recently that it rained harder than it did, I think, when we had our flood on June 19th. The only difference is the rains then lasted longer. But this last rain we had was 1.6 inches, and it got close to coming out of the banks just the other day.
I was out till 1 o'clock Sunday morning monitoring it, and at 12:30 it was getting ready to breach the intersection of Turtleback Creek and Park Street, and that's about the time it quit raining, about 12:30ish. So give that for granted. It had a little more time to rise, so I kept going back down to the town hall. We were within a foot of the top mark at Sale and Main,
But that's
then it started receding. So,
but that's only for perspective, because what we're really talking about right now is Meadowlands.
right, exactly.
So do we hold any hope at all of the retention pond doing any good?
I'm sorry.
Do we hold any hope at all that the retention pond will do any good?
Well, if you look at Patrick's pictures of the retention pond across the creek in the new phase, it breached all the way around it, and the pipe, which I think is a 15-inch, it was full, and so I'm just not sure what to say about that, because I'm not qualified to say why that happened, and it was a brand new retention pond. It did not have its riprap, but all it done was go over the riprap as well. So.
How fast did it come up?
Oh,
It sounded like really, I mean, just boom.
I'm sorry,
How fast did the water come up for you?
For me, I watched it probably within 20 minutes. I had it at probably 30 feet from the home, and within 20 minutes, I had it at 2 feet I had it on the first step of my back deck. Within an hour, I'm shaking my head because, I mean, it's up to my crawl space door and pouring in my block. So I went ahead and got in, started pumping from the crawl space out, and ran a fire hose out to the street so I could get in front of the creek. But biggest concern is it seems like ever since, you know, and I'm glad for the addition by all means, but it just seems like all that flash and the direction of that, it's just so fast and so much so quick. I mean, like he was saying, I got a 3-foot trampoline that's probably 15 foot circumference, and it was 6-8 inches from the bottom of that, and it was moving it in my yard. I mean, it was literally looked like a retention pond in my backyard. And I've had rains in 18. And respectfully on the rains, I understand we've had a lot here lately, by all means. I agree with that. I just, in 18 and back in 04 everything, I was at 04 when everything was flooding down here and cars were moving downtown and all that. I had water in the yard, and I've always had, because we've been there since we moved, but I've never had that much water since that's been built. It's concerning just because it's my home, and and I'm getting that much in my footers and in my crawl space, and I'm worried and they haven't even built the second half of the homes that are going to be flashing off that new addition that they built the bridge with. So that's why I turned to Mr. Farmer and took some videos so that way you could kind of get an idea of what is happening, because by talking about it, you wouldn't think about it, but the one video it has, it's ruined my shed and everything in it. Had it at 12.5 inches off the ground, and it's the things I had in it are ruined, and so I'm just, I'm really concerned.
Yeah. Mike, do you think that we, mentioned about getting an engineer to kind of look at this, but should they also give a pass on what we do with new developments? I mean, would that be something we could put in their scope? Because maybe what we're doing is not effective enough for this, for, new developments. I don't know. I mean, I'm just more speculating out loud.
I don't know. I mean, I can't, we probably understated what it looked like down there and how fast it flashed. And, common sense would say that a development upstream from it has to have something to do with it. In theory, these days, when you build a subdivision, the retention should hold as good or better than it did before it was developed.
Right.
And so the retention pond that is not in place behind his house will indeed help sometimes. But I'm not sure that that anybody builds anything that would take on as much water as we've had recently in some of the flash flood rains we've had. I think it's both things are going on here. So I'm sure that I'm not qualified to weigh in and decisively say what we should or shouldn't do. So as I told Patrick, I immediately called the developer when I discovered that a retention pond wasn't even in, and me and Kevin talked, and we was prepared to stop construction if they didn't start on it immediately. But hell, it's rained like 3 times since then. We've had 3 flash flood events since I talked to him, and that was just, a week ago?
Yeah, a week ago. So, and I was going to say to that, I walked back there and looked at that receiver that was taking that 12 or 14 inch from the road back to that receiver that's there now that we looked at. And they're going to put the retention pond in that. My curiosity, like you said, maybe it is a good idea with an engineer, because my curiosity is that's right at my level at the home. So with that receiver taking that and then backing up in the creek, where are we getting are we going to get the same run over rise? You're right. I'm not, by all means, I'm just a plumbing contractor. I'm not an engineer either. So by all means, I'm not wanting to say that retention pond they're getting ready to put into my neighbor's backyard and that easement side, that wouldn't help some. But I really have a hard time believing with all the rain I've seen, that it's gonna keep. The last rain we had, I think we had a couple inches in a few hours. It seemed like 2 or 3 hours, and it was a massive amounts of water compared to what I used to have in 2 or 3 hours.
How quick does it recede?
It doesn't real quick. It takes a while. And in the front of my house, if you look at it to the right, I literally have a lake in my front of the house because it's overrunning the road and it's pushing up to the front side of my house. So I'm just getting it at all angles. And I just really noticed it heavy June 19th, 7 a.m. when that real bad rain came in. I was in the second floor in the loft, and I looked out the window and I took video of it, and that's the one I sent. It's just unreal. You wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe me if I didn't have a video on it. It shocked me. So I was like, man, that's a lot of water. And then by the time I got, and it was 20 feet, 30 feet out. By the time I got down to the kitchen and out onto the patio, I looked down and I'm right there. It's right there. It's my first step in 20 minutes. Okay. So,
so you're going to, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, please.
Can you work with the developer and whoever and then report back to us next meeting where we're at?
I can, and in the meantime, I'd like to, the street department's looking at all the culverts and making sure we don't have any obstruction in them, and we're going to try to get with either the developer or, maybe even move a piece of equipment in. We really need to get those trees out of there. They cannot be helping. The trees are big around these desks and they're crossways in the creek, so.
And that creek's small enough we don't need a permit for that, right?
I wish you hadn't asked. I don't know.
I think there's a size that we don't need a permit for.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a bearer of bad news, but I can say them trees fell that last heavy rain like that. But that one before the rain, right before you and I had talked and come over. So I'm not downplaying at all. I agree, getting the trees out of there and getting the brush. There's a lot in there, and that would help a lot, I hope. But I'm really not sold on that.
Well, if we can get it at least cleaned back to where it was, then you can really evaluate what's causing the issue as opposed to what's exacerbating an issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so if you'll come back to us next go around with at least some update as to what's going on, Patrick, we'll do the best we can.
Thank you. I appreciate you
for
guys.
letting us know, and I'm really sorry you're having.
Sorry, Sandy.
I just want to tell you that years and years ago on the Planning Commission, we realized that the developer makes the plan, and we don't have anyone that goes in and guarantees that that developer followed their plan. They, the street department checks their stuff, and the building department checks the buildings, but as far as the grading and the lay of the land, for years we've been not had that service provided after the fact to make sure. And I think that it's time that we do, and I wonder if Christopher Burks would help us at all in that area. They're not very close, but something, yeah. You just need a guarantee that it is installed properly.
Well, Rick was he's a certified MS4 operator, and, he met that requirement for quite some time, but IDEM did not like him because he worked for BFA, and he was an engineer that sometimes did projects inside Ellettsville. They didn't like it, and so just had a appropriateness and some dissatisfaction with the way IDEM treated BFA and Rick in particular. They just quit doing it. So the person that has probably the best historical knowledge and is qualified as an MS4 operator as well as an engineer, and is pretty good about how he goes about his business, the government, the state government run him off. So we don't have anybody like that right now.
Seems to be a theme, so.
Hope it didn't step on anybody's toes, but I wasn't too worried about it.
Well,
Yeah.
Said what I said.
Christopher first, right?
Well, I just thought,
As
they're
an
doing our
example.
flood study
Right.
for us, and it's not in that area at all.
Would we be able to increase the scope? Obviously, there would be additional costs with that, but if they did that,
Yeah, but they're not
It
on the
can
ground
be-
resources.
okay.
It can be it used to be piecemeal. He'd just come over. He used to be the MS4 operator, and I believe they paid $1,900 a month. Is that correct?
Yes, for that and engineering services.
And engineering services, and we decided on behalf of the BFA and even the board, we decided not to do that anymore, to be transparent, and all the guff we got from IDEM, so we just quit doing that, and we really don't have a mechanism. I mean, we could ask some other companies to do it, but all those other companies work in this town as well. All the engineering firms in town work in Ellettsville. They all have the same situation. So to go to Christopher Burke would be cumbersome. They'd never be available on short notice. It'd cost us a lot of money because they'd have to travel. And so it's somewhat of a conundrum that we're in when it comes to all this. So.
This predates my time at the council.
It's an ongoing, and has been an ongoing issue for years. And some of the IDEM personnel and some of their beliefs or disbeliefs as it went. And it puts everybody in a bad place because you can't have staff on hand that has historical knowledge and long-term knowledge because someone somewhere has no local knowledge at all decided that it wasn't appropriate, even though it was always professed up front and always made very much known to the public as a whole as to what was going on and how it was going on.
So in this case, we would
Thank
have
you.
somebody.
Thank you for
In the short term, we'll be in touch.
Yes.
We're going to do whatever we can, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you know, when Rick was doing this, I mean, he was doing a great job. He was always there. Whenever we needed him, we could just call him up. And it's gonna be hard to find a company that will do that for us.
And I'm afraid if we go the hodgepodge method where we pick one this week, we don't get that continuity.
Right. And-
Is Rick willing to entertain this at all anymore?
I mean, we had him on retainer, and I guess that's what they didn't like. I mean,
Well, I'd have to ask him and to exasperate the situation, is that what? Our MS4 operator that we use part-time through planning, his last day is Thursday. So we're gonna train someone internally to become an MS4 operator, but it'll take months, if not a couple of years, to really get up to speed. And I think I may be learning how to be one myself.
Okay, so I guess my question, if we're gonna train one, can we train two or three? I get it, it's prohibitively
If we
costly.
can find that many guys.
If you put your eggs all in one basket and then a person leaves, now we're back to square one.
Yeah, I get that, and we try to cross-train people, so it's a good idea. And, you know, the planning department, I mean, they know more about it than they want to probably, and so.
I'm cross-trained on some of the MS4 stuff, but I'm not an engineer. And right now, we still have Rick reviewing all the plans. We just don't have anyone checking them after the fact. And that's
No, I
kind of where
think
we're at.
it's even broader than that. While we don't have the checking after the fact, we also don't have always immediate access to him maybe before the fact. It's after the fact. So would you see if he'd at least entertain a short-term consulting?
I'll talk to him and Jeff Fanyo and see what they would recommend.
And then if we need to go with IDEM, we can make our appeals to them to make everything right with them.
Well, I think the inspector that caused all the fuss doesn't even work there anymore. So,
Well, then that should make things easier.
yeah, I mean, William, when we had problems at that same time, came in defense of the town, and some of his state contacts helped us out, so I think we can work it out.
Okay. And again, just see if we can make,
Right.
see if we can make it right with Rick to bring him back on board.
I was
talk
going
to
to say,
them.
for those like myself, what is MS4? What's it stand for? We're using the acronym, but I honestly have no idea what it.
Do you know? I do not know.
Stormwater regulations, and it was put in by the state, and we were forced because of our proximity to Bloomington, we were in their area, and it required us to have an MS4 operator. That is about the extent of my knowledge, but Rick immediately picked that up and was trained in that area, and he did serve in that purpose for years and years.
And they need to be an engineer.
They are, I don't know the answer.
I don't know that you have to be an engineer. I'm trying to look it up. And
The MS4 operator doesn't have to be an engineer. I mean, if you have one that is an
helps.
engineer,
Right.
it's nice, but
Yeah.
we didn't have that luxury after Rick.
And that's
Left
why
us
Rick
for
was
Problem,
such
and the engineers don't have to fix that problem.
Right, I gotcha.
But did Rick, when he was the MS4 operator, did he go and look at the subdivisions after they were built to make sure they were built as spec'd out?
he did, and I know for a fact that he was very, he lorded over all those problems that would come up like that, and he was, anytime it rained, he was in town, and so.
I went with him a couple times, so I know for a fact he did.
Okay, well, if we could try and make that adjustment or try and at least get those questions answered,
Okay.
we'll go from there. Is there anyone else having business on the flood report from the council and from the public?
I would add, for the public is, I'll be sharing all those pictures with you.
Please.
And videos, you'll be shocked.
Seeing no one from the public, we will move on now to new business. I'm sorry, Envision Ellettsville update. Mr. Rary, is this you? Come back to you here in just a second, Dennis.
Dan Rary here. Just a very, very brief update. We did have a really nice article about this in the HT last Sunday, and they had interviewed Krista Curtis and Kyle Hannon and Lisa Cisco. Also, the WFHB Community Radio did an interview with Krista Curtis, and it was on air. So we're getting some really good publicity out of this, getting the word out there so everybody knows what's going on. I think I reported last time our goal is $45,000 fundraising. We've raised over $35,000 now, and then plus we have the $30,000 dollar grant from the Community Impact Grant from the Community Foundation. July 27th, we're having a steering committee meeting with our Taylor Seifert Williams Design Group, and they'll report on their data collections, their web and communications development, and their outreach and visioning. So we're making great progress, and probably by the 1st of August, we'll have some more meat on the bone here. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Ray? I see none.
As always, thank you for your help and your cooperation and your help with the fundraising.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now let's go back in the agenda and cover ordinance 2021-13, pilot agreement with Ellettsville Senior Citizens Housing LLC, the Richland Citizens Housing in Maple Shades, excuse me.
Good afternoon. This is Yvonne Delgadillo with Allied Real Estate Partners here on behalf of Richland Senior Citizens Housing. I apologize for all the technical glitches encountered. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to once again come before you. We did want to clarify a few things we didn't have an opportunity to present on the last meeting. I did want to confirm Governor's Park has nothing to do with this request or with Richland. This project that we're going before you right now is solely for Richland Senior Citizens Housing Phase 1, Phase 3, Phase 5, and Phase 6, which is the new construction, as well as Maple Shades. These projects will continue to be owned by, it has the same nonprofit board, and they're doing two things which remain unchanged. One of them is the rehab of the existing projects, and the second piece is the construction of new units, which is what we refer to as Phase 6. The previous action that the board took a few months ago granted an abatement for the new units only, as the others at that time were owned by a non-profit and they didn't need one. So the state allowed for anything owned by a non-profit in terms of housing to get that tax exemption. The pilot allows all the Richland properties to be under the new ordinance that the state approved and continue operating as it has since the first building was developed. What's different now is with the tax credit financing that's going to be used to rehab the existing units and to build the 50 new units, is that the projects will need to convert from a nonprofit state to become an LLC. The nonprofit will continue to be involved. It's owned by the nonprofit, but just for the funding and financing to come through, it needs to come through that LLC. So that's the gist of that. What's great now is that the legislature allows this action to grant exemption through you, the county board, and to continue allowing these projects to function as they are. They will continue to be for seniors who are 62 and over, was what the board decided and defined seniors as. So now we're coming before you and asking the board to continue supporting that tax exemption for all the properties, all the Richland properties.
Questions? Did you want to say anything to this before?
I was just going to introduce her, but she's already took off. So
Okay. Can you hang
if
on a
you've
minute?
got some questions, I have some. If I can answer them for you, I will.
Okay. Any questions from council? Okay, Yvonne, I've got one because you and I discussed this last time. When we first looked at this agreement a couple weeks ago, a month ago, I'm sorry, I don't remember when, I specifically inquired about an age restriction in this recital.
Yes.
I still see none. Is there a problem placing that in there?
No. Oh, go ahead, Margo.
We did, Scott. I added a section 1.7 It's on page 3.
Sorry, we just weren't finding it here.
I see
Owner,
it right here.
owner agrees that the project will be used only to provide for
Sorry, too.
low income. Okay, I'll change it to low income, senior, age 62 and over housing.
Okay, thank you. We just couldn't find it earlier.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Darla, for working with us on that.
Carson, are you on board? Carson?
Yes,
Okay. Is that wording correct? I want to make sure that's right, since you cover what,
that wording is no problem at all. It's gonna still stay elderly household, which is 62 handicapped or disabled, 100% rent subsidy, so that each resident will only pay 30% of their adjusted income, and the rest will either be directly through HUD, or in the case of Steinsville, and in the case of our Phase 5, it goes through the project-based voucher to Wilmington Housing Authority. That's exactly the same rent computation, exactly the same operation. Nothing has changed other than to receive the credit. We had to create a new entity. And Allied's role in this one is they will be the general contractor and they're the co-developer, and then when it's occupied, they drop off. So it's going to be 100% the same we've always had.
Okay. Other questions from council? Anything you want to add?
no, I covered it all.
Questions from the public concerning this agreement or comments? Seeing none, we're back to council for potential action.
Actually, do you mind if I do ask a question?
Sure.
You had mentioned that some of this would be in Steinsville, or is any of this going to be in the county portion that's adjacent to Ellettsville?
So the request that's coming through the town of Ellettsville is solely for the properties in Ellettsville. We'll have to go before the Steinsville town for failure. So that's, which is the other property.
Oh, okay.
We'll be requesting the same that we're asking of you for that particular property.
Well, I guess
In
what
this case,
I was asking, if any of the expansion for this was adjacent to Ellettsville, I was going to recommend you guys asking to annex into the town of Ellettsville so we could cover all of it, if it's
No,
possible.
we run one in Steinsville. We did
Okay.
it down there about 15 years ago.
No problem.
But we run it, but it's in Steinsville.
Okay, it's not, okay.
Contiguous.
Yep, not contiguous.
Thank you, Dennis.
Okay.
Is there action from the council concerning this ordinance?
I will make a motion to approve the ordinance 2021-13 pilot agreement with Ellettsville Senior Citizens Housing LLC, Richland Citizens Housing, and Maple Shades.
Motion a second. Sandy, please.
Scott Oldham?
Yes.
Pamela Samples? Yes. William Ellis?
Yes.
Trevor Sager?
Yes.
Dan Swafford?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, now we're down to new business agreement with AT&T FirstNet and the Utilities Department.
I guess I'll take
Thank you to everybody. I don't know if I've got a good enough signal, but I'm out of town, but thank you so much, board. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Carson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Okay, so, I recently had a meeting with AT&T business reps to take care of it. And before they could even talk, I started telling them my concerns about being able to use the phone in certain circumstances during storms and emergencies, and sometimes just in general, and that I wanted better service for my operators and the department heads to be able to use their phones. So FirstNet was introduced to me, and they said they could turn us over to a FirstNet agreement, and I think it's police and fire are on those agreements already. And so this is agreement will allow us to enjoy the same services that police and fire get. So I think they even mentioned that our costs might go down under the FirstNet agreement. So
it is a reduced rate bill.
Yeah, so we'd just like to be able to enter that agreement. I thought you needed to approve it.
Does that prioritize first responders on cellular networks? Is that what it does?
Yes, there's quite a few services that don't drop off during an emergency, and if they do, they come back quicker. And so for our operators of water, wastewater, and even storm sewer, it's good to be able to communicate during that. So
This is priority banding, where it
Right,
sets
okay.
aside a part of the bandwidth for government use.
That's basically what I was, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, questions from the council concerning this? Darla, do we even need a motion for this, since it's a,
I would, just for the record.
is there action from council?
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement with AT&T FirstNet for the Utilities Department,
so that should actually be Department of Public Works.
for the Department of Public Works.
There's a motion in a second, so when you're ready, Sandy.
Scott Oldham,
Yes.
Pamela Samples,
Yes.
William Ellis,
Yes.
Trevor Sager,
Yes.
Dan Swafford.
Yes.
Motion carries. And I'd like to make a clarification. I did a really bad job on that MS4. I didn't really tell William what it is, but it's all about stormwater control.
I didn't even answer it well enough.
Okay, well, I didn't think I got this. I talked about the district and everything, but not really that it was just flat out stormwater
Well,
control.
when I ask a question, I usually wander around all the time anyway, so I was able to interpret what you meant. You're good.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move along now. We'll discuss playground equipment.
I'd love to talk about playground equipment.
Are we
So-
gonna do an on-site survey so we can play on the slides?
Well,
Jimmy goes first.
I've made a recommendation to the board. I sent them an email, and I want to spend some money to replace the playground equipment that originally was on top of Campbell's Park. It was the rudiments of a playground, and so when we took it out of there, I was surprised to have so many people say, when are you going to put some playground equipment back up there? And so we decided we'd do that. I talked to Denise about ADA requirements, and we can't meet ADA requirements on top of Campbell's Park. So then we decided, after talking to Jimmy and several people about it, that perhaps we would replace the Campbell's Park playground equipment, which I think fits perfectly up there and is enjoyed by many people, and that we'd put an ADA compliant set of playground equipment across the way by the shelter house, if you will, and the ball diamonds, basketball courts. And we've talked to Marty Stevens, and he's glad to host that piece of playground equipment. And so we'd like to elaborate on the equipment, or not elaborate, but we'd like to expand on the equipment that we have, maybe put some more swings by the shelter house, a climb, and gussy it up so it landscape-wise, and put some maybe some seats in so people can enjoy it, and older people like me can sit there and watch the kids play. When we kept talking about it, and we talked about, if we were going to do this, I decided it was time to really get into the Parks Department business, and I think that it would be well received if we also built a park just to the west of us, outside this parking lot area. It's part of our master plan for parks, part of our trail system, and eventually when we get a trail system in, all three of these places where we put park equipment will be attached. And so it's part of a grand plan that that we work with the planning department and the parks department, and it's always been part of the grand plan, and I think maybe we ought to be bold and do all this at the same time and really get into the parks business. Like I said, all the surveys we've ever taken for the last 2 decades, the 3 that I know of, park playground equipment and parks was top of the list, always. It's besides flooding, which is playgrounds and trails are what everybody asked me about. It's one of the reasons I said I'd be town manager, And I just think it's time. I mean, I think we can afford to do this, and I think we'll be surprised how what we do now will get even more in the near future. And so I propose that we spend up to $140,000 and put this playground equipment in, put it in properly, and landscape it, and make sure that the parents and people that want to come and just enjoy the kids playing have a place to rest and set. And I'd like to move forward with it. I sent pictures of what we proposed. We went on a trip around Monroe County, and we went and looked at all the Monroe County parks. The Dittmer Park over on Curry and Vernal is a perfect example of what we'd like to duplicate. I think the county and the city of Bloomington just have fabulous parks. I want to be part of that.
I have a question. The ground for these, I know in like a lot of the city parks of Bloomington City, it's kind of like a rubbery recycled tire thing for safety.
Yes.
Will the ground be like that? Will we be able to do that?
Yes, we have. That's part of the quotes.
Okay, awesome. I think that's even better for safety and probably for insurance purposes.
If you've been to Dittmer Park, it'd be very similar to Dittmer Park,
Okay,
right?
I've not been there. So.
Yep.
I'll ask the obvious question, where's the money coming from?
It will come from our general fund. We'll have to do a special appropriation. We don't like to do those kind of things normally, but well, our chief financial officer, the town clerk, she keeps us in line about that kind of stuff.
He almost
but
called you
timing's
Grinch.
everything, and we have the money. I mean, we have the money to do that.
Okay.
I did send out an email today in response to a question from William and told the extra monies that we've received over the past year and a half. And our operating balance was $2 million at the end of June, which is up over $400,000 from the end of June last year. So we really...
Which is up $2 million from 2006.
Yeah, up $2 million from 2006, that's right. So, and the thing of it is, it's not like a reoccurring expense. It's going to be a one-time expense, just like the trail, when we put the trail in. It's a one-time expense, and then you recover from that, and it's not ongoing.
And we're not looking at a lot of ongoing maintenance costs with these, are we?
There'll be some burden on our Department of Public Works. Is Kip looking at me right now? And but I think we can handle it. I mean, as we grow, everybody knows putting in parks, putting in trails takes maintenance, takes people, it costs money. We'll always have to go slow and be deliberate, but this is what the town wants. This is what the town people want. And I think we're missing, I've always said, the next big move is to make the Parks Department equal to all the other departments in our town. I mean, that should be our next goal.
Mike, when did you take the equipment out? Up at Campbell's? I was shocked to see it was gone. Really? Yeah.
Well, if you remember,
longer than that.
If you remember, I sent several emails out on it. Several
I
emails.
remember. I went up and looked at it and seen
Yeah.
how dangerous it was.
And we had the investigator from the insurance company come just in case we could maybe get some money from it, and he said it was all wear and tear. But he recommended right then. In fact, Danny and Kip put the yellow tape around for no use at that time. So,
how long was that equipment there?
1998.
1998.
$12,000. It cost $6,000 2 years ago to replace 2 slides. So I mean that's where we're at with it. So it's just.
And we buy those used.
Pardon me?
We had to buy those used. Did we
Yes,
not?
right. Yes.
That's when I came to work here and look at what all those years has done.
Right.
to me.
I got a couple more questions too.
And there's just a couple more things.
Sure.
I tried several people to get it repaired, and nobody was interested in repairing it. So it's just,
I'm not
Yeah.
saying
Okay.
anything. I'm glad it's gone. I
Okay,
was just
good.
shocked that it wasn't. I didn't
Yeah.
remember it being taken
Yeah.
out. You probably told us, but I forgot.
Yeah, I
So,
did, yeah.
Question though, on this, it seems like we could apply for some grant money to cover some of this. Because I think playground equipment, that's one thing they really like to give grant money for.
Well, let me tell you what I think about grants.
Okay.
They're great when you can get them. There's always a catch usually, and there's hoops and things you have to go through to get them. It seems the haves always get the grants and the have-nots don't. And so if you're tight with your money and you're trying to be frugal and stay solvent, you can't get those grants. We don't have really a grant writer. I mean, really, we probably ought to apply for a grant a week, just hoping we'll hit it. But it's kind of like getting the lottery sometimes when you're in competition with these bigger entities, and you know, it's like the American Rescue Plan money. They have entitled towns and cities, and they have unentitled towns and cities. And guess where all the money goes? To the entitled. I don't understand how this all works, but it doesn't work well for us a lot of the times. And so to wait for that and let that be something that holds us back, I just think the time's now for us to take our own money and do what we need to do.
And I understand they're very tedious to write grants. It's very stressful and everything, but I just was curious.
Yeah,
if
yeah.
anyone had looked into that.
Well,
And
go ahead.
I was gonna say, Denise and I get notices daily, a couple times a week on new grants or stuff that's coming out. And I haven't seen anything in regard to playground equipment, so we try and keep an eye on what's available, and then look. If it's something looks interesting, we look and see if we have a legitimate chance at it. A lot of times we're ruled out for just various reasons, but we keep an eye on what's coming around.
One of the reasons we get ruled out a lot of times is because we don't have an actual parks department. We have a parks board,
Right.
but we don't have a functioning department to administer the
And that
funds.
was my next question.
Yeah.
Timing is all, is big. It's like Mike said, you know, now's the time to do it, too.
Well, I think there's sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Well, go ahead. Yeah, I think we're going the same place.
I mean, there's a burgeoning question for a lot of different things within the park, so I think you're right. That should be our next entity. We just have to figure out how we fund it. That said, I would support this move because it's almost, you have to look at categories of children and who we're going to take care of. Marty's done a really nice job with the ball fields, trying to take care of that 5 to 12 range. We're not doing a whole lot for the underneath that group. We're not doing a lot for the over top of that group. So let's let Marty continue with what he's doing for now, and then maybe add some benefits, that being the township trustee. Maybe we can partner with him for more ball fields, and you guys have heard me preach this before, but I think we need to take care of that younger set of kids, which this is going to address. The only thing I ask is we put up lights to protect it.
That's good. I think this is long overdue, so kudos to both you guys on this. I'm looking forward to voting for this tonight, especially as the father of a 4-year-old who wants to go to the playground every other day. So,
Mr. President, if I could just, I may have already said this in past meetings, but been here 6 years, almost 6 years now. Take a lot of phone calls, but I've gotten more phone calls on the playground equipment being gone than any that I've gotten. So that's how paramount it is for us. So
I think you look at the parks, and everybody in Ellettsville is going out to the county. They're going out to Bloomington to enjoy parks with their children. Why not let them do it here in their backyard?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love the idea of having one back here. That makes perfect sense.
I have a question. Don't get over that way. What happened to Flatwoods Park? I never hear anything about it. Is it still there? Are we doing anything with it, or?
We went to that one, and they have, someday it's going to be a fabulous park, because I think they have like 100 or maybe 200 acres. And so if you go out there, you'll see a really nice array of playground equipment, much like we want to
I've been there, but it's been a long time ago, so I just thought I'd never heard nobody talk about it.
It's still in play, and we're constantly talking to the county and even Owen County, and we want the trail systems to meet up at Flatwood someday. That's where Owen County's gonna bring a trail, and that's where Monroe County's gonna bring a trail, and then we'll be a feeder trail into theirs. And so we've had, I don't know, 3-4 meetings here in the last 6 months about it, and we went for a grant with IU Health, but we didn't get it. And so, you know, I mean, it's always going to be there, and Flatwoods is going to be a centerpiece someday for a large regional trail system.
I just wondered.
One thing I also want to comment on, I hear a lot of people want parks. I want a Tesla too, but until I can afford one, I'm not going to get one. So, I mean, that's what it comes to. You know, people, we have to be able to afford this, and that's why I want to come back again to when you say, when I'm talking about the ongoing cost, is it at this point for just what we're talking about building now? Would you say we can do it with the resources we have? I'm not talking about the future growth of parks. I'm just talking about what we're talking about tonight. What type of, just ballpark for me, ongoing cost are we going to incur because of this? Because what I don't want to get is creep to say, we can pay for this, but the maintenance is going to cost X, Y, and Z, and we can't pay for that later, and we're going to have to tax our residents more, which I won't do.
I think one of the things you look at is personnel, which is your biggest driver for maintenance
Understand.
cost. If they're already under the shed, as it were, of the town, that's essentially no, because they're here one or the other. Now, clearly,
Exactly.
there's a cost, but
Right.
it's,
I guess, are we going to be hitting budget time saying, well, we got 3 new parks, we're going to need to hire new people? I'll just point blank ask that.
I don't intend for that to happen anytime soon. Someday it'll happen when we flesh out all
No.
of this 50 acres into a grand park.
Well, absolutely.
And
I
Stewart
understand.
property comes into play. Then, yes. Well,
But
you know,
once, I'm just, like I said, well, I'm not disagreeing with that, or saying that I would not be for that, but just for this here, I want to make sure that it's something the town can afford, because that's what I want. I mean,
the sites that we're talking about now, we mow already.
right.
And there'll be less mowing when they put the pads down. Every once in a while, we may have to do a little spit shining.
I'm not worried about that.
And things like that. And we may have to fix a hole here or put something back together.
So it sounds like we can afford the ongoing maintenance, if I'm paraphrasing correctly, without more funding for these 3 parks. Not our park expansion plans, but just for what we're talking about tonight.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, then what about the time for the guys? I mean, we have all these projects going on. We want to start the flooding, deal with that, deal with this, deal with the building. I mean, you have enough guys that are going to be able to handle all this?
We've
the
never
trails?
had enough guys.
And they never will.
And we never will. And we've, through the last 23 years, we have done projects that a couple times I've like, why did I start this? But we started it and finished it. It was to the good of the town. We've always been able to rise up and take care of capital projects as well as our day-to-day things. It's never easy. Sometimes the crews are not appreciative of my wanting to do things, but that's why I got a job. And yeah, we can take care of it. I mean, yes. We've always taken care of our stuff.
We have a couple part-time employees every summer to help maintain the grounds for our parks and all of our areas, so.
If you look at the projects, the capital projects, the street department and utilities have been involved in the last 20 years, it would amaze you what we can do and do our day-to-day work. So you would be amazed.
Mr. President,
yes.
just one more thing worried about the maintenance. Where the old playground equipment was, every 2.5 years, we had to replace the mulch, correct? I mean, that was a constant thing we did. With the new equipment, we will not be worrying about that.
I like that.
It'll be just like this right here, and it's flat and easy going, and so.
Is it going to take up more space in the festival?
It won't intrude on the festival, no. No, we've
Because I
already
know we don't have a
checked
whole
that.
lot of space down there.
No, it won't intrude on where we're going to put it. It will not intrude on the festival grounds.
Probably get a lot of action during.
Right, get a
I'd
lot of
like to
action.
see
Yeah,
that. That's awesome.
Parents will love it, no doubt. Parents will love this.
Okay. Is there any other questions from council?
Well, I think, kind of to touch on what William said too about extra employees and stuff, I really see us wanting to build this Parks Department up. I mean, so if we hired people, it would probably come in that direction, correct? I mean, is that what we're trying to?
We haven't decided yet. I mean, with the Department of Public Works, there's an ebb and flow with the workforce doing whatever street is involved with or the utilities involved with. Maybe we'll think the same way with the Parks Department, but we have reached, I promise, kid, we have reached the low ebb of how many employees we should have, and you'll only see our workforce grow from here. As long as the town's growing, we're going to need more help in the future. You're going to hear about it, and if I'm not asking, somebody else will be. So.
Well, you guys keep in mind that, you know, we're already talking about maintenance that's accomplished daily. You know, and I know Mike doesn't want to talk about it tonight, but I'll just briefly mention it. There's some funds available to turn Stewart pasture into a dog park. Well, again, they're mowing that weekly anyway, so this is not a big leap to get from A to C right now. Now, from A to Q, big leap, probably need people. You know, but again, maybe there's some things along the way we can do to mitigate those costs over the long
And I
term.
don't disagree. I just wanted to make sure that myself, I was clear, public's clear, what this entailed. And,
Sure.
you know, that, but no, I'm
We're probably
excited
into
about
more maintenance right now without the equipment
Yes.
there than we will be with the equipment there.
especially equipment that we had before that was needing stuff replaced. I'm just saddened to see it go, but on the other hand, excited about what can we replace it with. I think those calls, hopefully those same people, at least half of them, they usually never call to say great job, but hopefully you'll get some calls.
Some
to
of them
say
did,
that.
some of them
Good.
did, but yeah.
Are
Several-
we, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Several-
Are we leaving the swing sets up there? Are we going to take those down?
Yes, we're
too?
leaving them.
They'll stay there, yeah.
And we'll have swing sets here and maybe at the shelter house as well if we have room.
And splash park going where again?
To be determined. I've had several requests for that as well, but I don't know.
Oh, I'm very big advocate for that. I can't wait till it happens, so.
So Darla, quick question. Because of the dollar figure involved here, are we going to have to take bids to get this equipment, or is this already on state bid, guys? Is that QPA?
If I could answer that, the equipment itself, the three examples I sent to you, which is close to what we'll probably get, according to the Parks Department and the Parks Board, that adds up to about $55,000. And then we're going to have to piecemeal some of the climbing units that we want to buy because we can't get them from the same people. And then there, you know, I put in there landscaping and things like that. So the total, you know, we'll probably prep the sites, which may drive down the cost of the units themselves, which will allow us to get even more equipment. But the cost is probably about $55,000 for the equipment that we'll buy in one unit. The rest of the stuff we'll probably just buy right off the internet.
I just want to make sure we can actually vote on the
It's a good
acquisition
question.
tonight.
Also, Mr. President, Serena is back there. Serena, wave your hand. She has been a big deal in this. When Mike and I would make the decisions, or and Serena we'd have to ask Sandy, can she do a little work on this? But the people we called several different manufacturers and got no response from several.
I just want to make sure that we're covered legally before we take
I
a vote on
understand,
this.
but like I say, if we're going to get 3 bids, we're probably not going to get 3 bids. That's what it amounts to, so.
And speaking of legal, Darla, are we going to have to carry any more insurance, or are we going to be covered for the new playgrounds?
Well, I would think that the town's insurance policy already covers that, but.
It may go up slightly when you multiply the playgrounds.
For the materials themselves.
Okay, and then I got a final question for Darla.
Yeah, the liability shouldn't go up. But if it's part of your inventory of assets, yeah, it may go up a little bit, but I wouldn't think it would be that much.
So the new locations won't.
That will help reduce the
Yes.
liability, the foam flooring. We haven't had an insurance company that came and inspected our parks for a long time. It has happened. They've come out and made suggestions on basically what the ground cover is. But I mean, there might be a slight increase by having multiple locations, but like Darla said, it's all one liability, I think.
So my final question, I think, are we the appropriate body to vote on this, or do we need to be transferring this monies into the Parks Department to allow them to vote on this acquisition?
Well, this is going to require an additional appropriation
I get
from
it.
the general fund, and I've asked the State Board of Accounts about that before I did it, because I was with you. Is it appropriate for us to pay for it out of the general fund? And they said that the town council is the governing body and they can make that decision.
I'm clear we can transfer the funds to Parks to make the decision, but can we make the decision?
No, we have to make it right out of the general fund. You have to purchase the equipment from the general fund.
Yeah, so I think the town council is the one that has to vote on it.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Is there do we really need it to be up on the hill at Campbell's Park and across the road, or could we combine it?
We
Would it
don't
be
need
cheaper
it.
to combine it on one area?
Well, we could, but Campbell's Park, I mean, it's such a great little park, and I think a piece of playground equipment on top of it is the icing on the cake for that spot.
I think it is good.
We own one park, we lease the other. We own Campbell's Park, we lease the other park.
Oh, across the,
Yes.
oh,
Which
okay.
park do we lease?
Okay.
Marcy Jean Lewis.
I mean, something,
Where the
just
shelter house is?
to follow up on the payment question,
Township
something
trustee.
for you to think about if you do want to grow the Parks Board, is a Parks Department is like a library board in the sense that it's its own political subdivision, and it can raise taxes if it wants to come up with funds. So that's just something to think about.
A Parks Department, however, cannot, a Parks Board can, correct?
The Parks Board can, so that's something to think about, because that would be allowed under the Indiana Code. It's like a library board.
That's interesting.
That's one of those Q things, right?
Not so much.
A, B, or C.
Yeah.
It's Q.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's deal with playground equipment tonight at this acquisition. Is there more questions from council or comments?
Just the equipment, is that all we're dealing with on this, or what? The whole package?
We're dealing with the whole package, the permission to do it and whatnot.
Who's doing up the plans for the landscaping and stuff? Are we doing
The
it?
town manager and the Parks Board.
Whatever's on sale at Lowe's.
I'm
Got
putting
this
myself
cool
on the
computer
line.
thing.
I mean,
I'm just curious.
yeah, we're gonna do it in-house.
Kip has a real nice skill too of doing that, so he can draw the pictures out and that type of thing, so.
I know where there's a really big rock.
Big rock.
I'd be glad to share.
Yeah.
Due to the public nature of this, is there public comment on this? Seeing none, back to the council for action.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase for playground equipment.
As well as playground plans. Does that work, Darla?
Yes.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Sandy?
Do we need to put a dollar amount on that?
I had $140,000 limit in my proposal.
Did I mean in the motion?
As described?
Okay. Fine with me. Does that work, Tyler?
That's fine.
Whenever you're ready.
Who was the second?
No.
Scott Oldham?
Yes.
Pamela Samples?
Yes.
William Ellis?
Yes.
Trevor Sager?
Yes.
Dan Swafford?
Yes.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing my granddaughter.
Now, for insurance purposes, we're not gonna have a ride called Wheel of Death this time, are we?
No.
Okay, just making sure.
Have a what?
A ride called Wheel of Death. Maybe scare off, sure.
That's at the Fall Festival.
Yeah, it's a fall festival.
Okay, privilege of the floor. Anyone having business for the council that's not part of our normal agenda this evening? Russ?
I sent Sandy an email with 2 attached pictures of the stormwater flooding on Mustang Drive, asking her to make that a part of the record of this meeting.
It is in the packet, yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Try.
See you guys.
It's in the packet.
Did you just got them all?
No, he can't screen it.
The overhead wasn't on, so.
Okay, can we go back to,
Nope. It just killed it.
Oh, it killed the meeting?
Well, it killed the display.
Across 7390 Reeves Road and dumps additional water into that area where I showed it going across Mustang Drive to the detention pond. We had 1.45 inches measured in a rain gauge in that area in about a 1 hour period. It is not that unusual in my 20-some years of keeping rain reports that we get 3 to 4 inches of rain in a 4 hour period. So I'm concerned that that is going to be a minimal amount of flood water to deal with unless we very carefully require and make sure they install adequate detention in any development south and west of that location. Thank you.
okay. Russ, and again, I'll remind you, please, whenever we're in that issue of flooding, comment then, don't save it for privilege of floor. That's for things not on the normal agenda. Anyone else having?
Denise has her hand up.
Yes, Denise.
Oh.
Sorry.
Nope.
Anyone else having privilege of the floor comments? I'm sorry, can we,
Pictures, if you want to see them.
if we could do that quickly?
A lot of flooding everywhere.
Yes.
These rain events or something else.
They're unique. I've been here 23 years. Actually, I've been here 70 years. And these storms are taking on a new,
I agree.
Yep.
new element of.
Okay. Kevin, can we go back to the screen so we can see everybody, just to make sure we don't have anyone else with privilege of the floor comments?
Yeah, no one has their hand up.
Okay. Seeing none from the public online or in the gallery, we will move to supervisor comments, starting with the town manager.
Okay, well, I did not write a speech for this, but it doesn't go without saying, Brian Miller, who has been with me since Jeff's been here longer than me, but since 1998, when I became the operator of the water utilities, Brian Miller followed me from City of Bloomington Utilities, where we worked for 10 years, and we've been together for 33 years. And so he has worked alongside me, all the crews, Tom Corman, Kip, and Danny Stallcup, and some of those successes we've had are directly related to Brian Miller and Tom Corman and the crew's efforts. And so Brian has taken another job and he's leaving us. I think everybody knows it by now. But I wanted to say in public that, he was off the charts, a great employee. And so we wish him well. We're going to miss him. And I just want to say that, when you talk about people that's helped the town be what it is, when you go back to all the old people, even when you mention people like Morris Enright or John Ball or the Jacobs boys and people that saved our schools, Brian Miller's right in there with them. So
Mm-hmm.
that's all.
Well, we'd like to thank him and congratulate him for all the time he spent here, and both gentlemen will be truly missed. Other supervisor comments?
Yes, Mr. President.
Always count on you. Go ahead.
I'm excited. Last meeting, I was excited about the lights on the trail and the parking lot lights. Well, I thundered down there after the meeting and the parking lot lights weren't on. So they are on now. In fact, they weren't on the whole weekend of July the 4th, but they've got them on now and the lights look wonderful. So you get a chance, stop down and take a look at them. Also, I wanted to expand on the trail happenings. I'm in a process now of obtaining estimates for a 24 by 24 covered concrete pad that will act as a picnic area for the parking area there. So if you want to go down there, we've got, Kip and I went down there today and got it marked off. We've got some people coming in to give us some estimates, so we're just on the bare grounds of it. The lights took parts of 2 years, budget years to finish, and this will be a similar amount to do this also. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that we're still moving forward on the Parks Department. Yes, I get excited. I'm so glad to be involved in Ellettsville's what we're doing. So especially with Mike, I've been having a good time. So
Thank you very much. Other supervisor comments? Moving now to council comments. Anyone? Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.